I thought I was working on my dream job. Getting to work in the video game industry and being part of its community was a great achievement for me. But after some years, I realized I was growing out of it. I didn't want my life to revolve around the job. And besides, while in the industry, I felt what true passion for games was, and I didn't have that. So it got me thinking. As a kid, I always liked photography, and I photographed everything that came across me. And during the last few years, I picked it back up. Going camping and tracking down animals to photograph, I was having so much fun. And after 1 year of overthinking it, I decided to quit my job and give my passion a go. Photography felt like a very crowded market, so I started looking for alternatives that would allow me to mix my passion for behavior and using a camera. Documentaries had been a big part of my life lately, so it felt natural to switch to video. And there I was, back in Spain, trying to figure out documentaries. I knew I needed a story, and I had to go with something as close to home as possible. I can't afford otherwise. It was February, and I landed on a cool story about Greek tortoises, and how climate change was affecting them in a very interesting way. And there were some tortoises in my province, so that worked. Great, now I just need my driving license. This had haunted me for the last 6 years. Every summer I thought about enrolling into the academy, something happened. Spending an entire summer in Germany, next summer being crazy, the next summer's lockdown, and the nail in the coffin was to be hired in a different country for my dream job at the time. But now there was no excuse, so I got my license. Before this, I had been exploring the place I wanted to record a documentary on Sundays with my father. He enjoys these kinds of things too, although I couldn't really spend the time I needed to get anything done. But finally I had my license, so it was time for me to go on my own and spend the time I needed. So there I was, in the middle of an abandoned farming field, near a model plane flying club, looking for tortoises. Luckily, it wasn't too late according to my research. Tortoises should be breeding by now, so it's all good. Or so I thought. It turns out that tortoises spend the entire day in burrows due to the high temperatures we are having lately during summers. I came back a couple of times, but I couldn't film any. Back in my house and half of the year in, I had nothing. I felt quite devastated and didn't really know what to do. I told myself that if I couldn't find a good story to tell, at least I should find something to film. Get some footage to build portfolio, maybe not a story, but some interesting fact about another animal I could record at this time of year. I started filming stuff in my garden without any objective in mind other than practice. In the meantime, I kept researching. The closest place I could think of were the marshes near my house. Alright, what do we have there? Avocates, stilts... Ooh, flamingos! Let's research about them. They shouldn't be too hard to film, and probably do something interesting. Breeding was out of the picture rather quickly. There are very few places in Spain where records of flamingos breeding have been taken, and Almería wasn't one of them. After some research, I found out that flamingos' way of feeding has a hidden effect on their environment. I knew that was it. I immediately jumped into the car and went to the marsh to see if any flamingos were around. Okay, this is not ideal, but let's keep looking. Talking to my father one day, he told me about this other place in the marsh, further away, that I could check. Maybe there were some flamingos there. The next morning I headed there, and lucky me, there they were. Finally, a glimpse of hope. I can actually work on this project, I told myself. I started going in the mornings, recording and practicing with my camera, getting some footage of flamingos and the environment. Most of the time I was just trying to keep things in focus, trying to introduce some movement into the shots, and from time to time tracking animals. I know that's the most important thing to practice, and that I needed to perfect the technique. I was comfortable using the camera. I had done this for many years, but video was a whole different beast. Suddenly too much light was a problem? I had a lot to learn, but I was determined. I finally had a good opportunity to do what I set up myself up to, and I couldn't miss this chance. After many days of recording and being completely covered in sweat, I decided that I had enough footage to start editing. And now I was back in my room trying to figure out how to edit a documentary. Editing was actually quite fun. I set myself up not to struggle too much with the footage by classifying it after every shoot, so getting a first rough cut wasn't bad. The editing process was slow and iterative. The more I worked on it, the more changes I thought of making. Editing has so many parts involved that it was challenging to make everything work together. And at some point I had to settle for good enough. And here we are, almost a year later, with a documentary I made from nothing. Learned a lot, and feeling like I know nothing. But for the first time, the next step is clear.